You open your eyes for the first time. There are bright colors and beautiful fauna everywhere you look. Everything seems almost magical. I mean, it probably helps that everyone around you is prone to bursting into song. There's talking apple trees, talking animals, and cheerful people all around you. You must be somewhere over the rainbow. Welcome to the wonderful land of Oz, a colorful, exciting place filled with light, acceptance, and love, and ruled over by an all-powerful wizard capable of granting his visitors with their heart's greatest desire. He's a wonderful, kind, generous wizard as far as you've heard. Since you're just a baby, this all seems pretty cool to you. You don't really do much thinking these days, so you're just happy to be surrounded by fun lights and sparkles. What kind of baby wouldn't be? But as you grow older, you find out that hidden underneath the candy-colored surface are much darker realities. This is why it would actually suck to live in the land of Oz. The land of Oz is divided up into 4 provinces. There's Gillicanin County to the north, Quadling County to the south, Winkie County to the west, and Munchkin County to the east. You were born in a family of working farmers. You, your family, and your neighbors are known as Munchkinlanders. Some wealthy city folk prefer to call you Munchkins, a pejorative term used to point out that Munchkinlanders are often shorter and far less wealthy than the average Aussian. Munchkinland is a vast province of generous farmland. You help your family grow corn in a small village. Once the corn is harvested, it's transported with the help of several stronger talking animals. You work together as equals. The family horse isn't just your horse. He's like a brother to you, and you talk about everything together. Munchkinland is ruled by the Throp family. They're the most powerful political dynasty in the province. Other smaller families rule smaller towns and villages in the surrounding area, but these mayors report to the Throps, who report to the Wizard of Oz himself. If you're lucky, and smarter than the rest of your peers, you'll be able to apply to Shiz University to study the latest and greatest farming techniques. Other subjects like politics and sorcery aren't typically taught to your kind. Perhaps if you demonstrate unique magical ability, an exception will be made. But you'll be better off mentally preparing to grow crops and dig up dirt in Munchkinland for the rest of your days. There's no place like home. Right? The Vinkas, also known as Winkie County, is inhabited by various tribes collectively called Winkies. These tribes include the Arjaki, Skro, Unamata, and Ugubezi tribes. The Arjaki tribe, ruled by the monarchical Tigala family, is the wealthiest and most powerful of these tribes. They have fortresses and castles throughout the Vinkas, and face the least amount of discrimination of the Winkies as a result. You may be familiar with Fairo Tigala, a pompous sort of prince studying at Shiz University. The Tigalas and the rest of the Arjakis speak a language similar to Aussian, the land's most common language, making it easy for them to communicate with people from other provinces. This is an advantage that other Winkies do not have. I guess that's why Fairo likes to dance his way through life so much. In the southernmost part of Oz is Quadling County, home of the Quadlings. This area is the least developed of Oz, filled with swamplands, poverty, and destitution. Due to the swampy soils, crops cannot be grown here, but the land is valuable for its large deposits of rubies. This has led to the ruling forces in Oz, particularly autocratic leaders like the Wizard, to use their military powers to clear the land in order for it to be mined. The land is currently overseen by an Emerald City-appointed viceroy to keep the local population in check. After all, no one wants their land and wealth taken away by a fascistic government ruler, so the viceroy and his military are there to ensure that the populace continues to work mining operations and do not complain, despite the low wages and horrible pay rates. If you're from Quadling County, it's highly unlikely that you'll ever leave or be able to advance your station in life. Maybe if you are converted to a different religion by a traveling missionary group, you can move to where they came from. But do you really want to? Quadlings don't have any educational opportunities and often find that it's best for themselves and their families if they just keep their heads down. Lastly is Gillicanin, the most industrially developed and economically prosperous region of Oz, located in the north. Gillicanin is a beautiful, mountainous region home to several upper-class cities, including Shiz, home of the famous Shiz University and the Emerald City. The people who live here are distinguishable by their blonde, curly hair, attractive faces, and gapped teeth. Gillicanin is far and above the wealthiest region in Oz, particularly in and around their major cities. Shiz University consists of several different schools with specializations based on their areas of study, similar to the real-world counterparts like Oxford Oxford University and the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. Students can only study a handful of different subjects as majors are fairly limited. They can study sorcery, politics and history, farming, or theatre. Presumably, if you aren't studying one of these subjects, you're likely working on the farms or mines across Oz to produce resources for the state. Luckily for you, you made it into the farming school, so you can finally learn how to grow corn better. Hooray! Just a little bit south of Shiz is the capital of Oz, the Emerald City. The sparkling green city is as glorious as you can imagine, as it should be, considering that it's the social, political, military, and economical capital of Oz. But it's not all shiny buildings and dancing citizens. There's a major wealth divide. If you look beyond the luxurious mansions, markets, and glamorous infrastructure made from solid gold, emeralds, and green marble, you'll find crime, poverty, homelessness, drug addicts, and worse. The only way you could avoid seeing these things is if you ignored them entirely, which plenty of wealthy citizens are more than happy to do while they sing and dance through life. Underneath the Emerald City is something even darker, a prison holding enemies of the wizard and other political prisoners. When people are sent there, they never return. So you'd best not make the wizard upset with you. Good thing he's supposed to be such a nice guy, right? The wizard who grants all those wishes with his magical powers, right? So bad news. The wizard isn't exactly all that he's cracked up to be. According to the song that everyone, very annoyingly, sings throughout the land, the wonderful Wizard of Oz is a whiz of a whiz, if ever a whiz there was, because of all of the wonderful things he does. However, the reality is much less wonderful. The wizard isn't so much of a whiz of a wizard, so much as he is just some guy from Nebraska who knows a few sleight of hand tricks. The wizard, or as he's known in his homeland, Oscar Diggs, arrived in Oz some years ago under mysterious circumstances. One day, the guy just dropped in riding a hot air balloon. Perhaps a technology glitch or magic trick gone wrong. Back in the United States, Oscar worked as a carny. And if you've ever been to a carnival before, you know that means lots of trickery powered by the magic of showmanship. Oscar was a con man, a hustler, and when he arrived in Oz, he figured out that he could use his skills to turn himself into a king overnight. Despite having no real magical abilities, Oscar used his technological savvy to convince the people of the Emerald City that he was a wonderful wizard. Eventually, he built up a large enough following to lead a coup d'etat against the throne. Oscar ordered the king to be assassinated and kidnapped his daughter so there was no official heir to the crown. With the ruling family out of the way, Oscar proclaimed himself the new ruler and insisted that everyone started calling him the Wizard of Oz. He was so popular that everyone went with it. But the reality is that he's just a carnival barker who knows a little bit about politics and human behavior. Of course, this information is kept very secret. I mean, there's a whole lot of farmers, miners, and enslaved animals that wouldn't be too happy to know that not only are their lives overworked and miserable, but their leader is a total fraud. In order to keep up appearances, Oscar hires actual magical people, such as Madame Morrible, to cast spells for him and make him look good. One of Oscar's, the wizard's first decrees was to build a yellow brick road connecting all the lands of Oz to the Emerald City. But in order to complete such a momentous task, the wizard would need more labor. As an ordinary American man, he was probably shocked and delighted to find out that animals in Oz could talk, work, and communicate alongside humans. But where he's from, animals are just animals. They work doing whatever humans ask them to, and they definitely don't get paid for it. The wizard wanted to bring this practice to Oz so he could have free labor for gemstone mining and his yellow brick road, among other things. In order to achieve this, he was going to have to ensure that the animals could not speak to humans or to each other. While living in America, the wizard learned that populations can be easily controlled when they have a common enemy. With a well-developed propaganda network, you can convince people of anything you want. They just need a common enemy to despise and a strong hero to rally around. The wizard cast himself as the hero in this story, obviously, and began oppressing the sentient animals that had been living, working, and thriving in Oz for years. During his rise to power, the wizard spun tales about how beastly the animals are acting. He told wealthy humans that where he comes from, animals don't have rights, can't speak, and are often kept in cages for their own protection. The idea of free labor was enticing to a whole lot of people, particularly those who were already frightened by the claws and sharp teeth that lions, tigers, and bears all have. The wizard rode the back of this anti-animal propaganda to rise to power. He convinced enough people of the populace that the land of Oz was in total disarray and could only be fixed with his help. And people believed him. When the wizard officially took power, the oppression of animals became even worse. If anything ever went wrong, he could simply blame the animals. They don't want to work the mines and farms? Well, maybe they shouldn't complain so much. There wouldn't be food shortages if more animals were willing to work for free, and so on and so forth. The wizard implemented a series of laws that marginalized the animals. Anti-animal sentiment was as high as it had ever been in Oz, but much of the oppression was happening in secret. The wizard doesn't have a parliament or congress to answer to, and he really just writes whatever laws he wants and lives in a huge castle. So that's what he did. First, he enacted laws that removed animals from their paid job positions. For example, he passed a law that forbade animals from teaching, resulting in the firing of Dr. Dillamond at Shiz University. Soon after, the wizard began kidnapping baby animals and locking them in cages when they were very young. This would prevent them from ever learning to speak or defend themselves, making them the perfect slaves. And because the wizard built a cult of personality around himself, the public by and large supported this decision, even participating in the cruelty themselves. After all, this opened a whole new market for jobs to be held by the economically struggling humans, such as animal tamers and zookeepers. For the wizard, this was as simple as telling a bunch of people that the animals were the reason they struggle financially. Not, the resources being funneled into building a city of emeralds. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, indeed. When offered a choice between staying poor or cracking a whip on a different politically oppressed class, a whole nation of people were convinced to be cruel and even violent to their fellow workers in order to advance their own position. If there's one thing that the wizard certainly succeeded at, it was bringing policies from his homeland directly to Oz. And he ruled the land as a king, with no checks or balances to stop his decrees. A pure tyrant. So what happens to people who defy the wizard or threaten to expose his secrets? As you can imagine, nothing good. Beneath the Emerald City is a place called South Stairs, an underground prison filled with people who get a little too close to the truth. The poorest streets of Shiz and the Emerald City are no stranger to seedy characters, but the prison is an outright dangerous community where the inhabitants are largely left for dead. The wizard allows, even encourages, that these people are tortured, drugged, or worse. Not a great deal is known about South Stairs, and you'd best hope that you never find out. One of the most famous enemies of the wizard is named Alphaba Throp, also known as the Wicked Witch of the West. When she was studying at Shiz University, Alphaba was recruited by Morrible to develop her magical abilities. But the wizard had no want or use for her skills outside of what Alphaba could do to further cement his own power. And she was not interested in doing this, as she was a huge animal rights activist. But the wizard rules Oz as a king, and he couldn't have her flying around telling everyone in the land that he is a liar with no magical powers. So the wizard did what he does best. Spread a bunch of lies and rebrand Alphaba as a wicked witch who wanted to kill everyone in Oz. I guess for the fun of it. If the wizard has one magical ability, it is seemingly the ability to get an entire populace to circle around a common enemy. So the wizard is a total jerk and an animal hater. Or really, a hater of anyone that doesn't worship the ground he walks on. But here's the real kicker. He's also a total idiot. Weird stuff happens in the land of Oz all the time, and it's largely a result of magical people not knowing how to properly utilize their skills because he doesn't want to be upstaged by someone else's magical powers. But this has led to some disastrous results. For example, Madame Morrible accidentally dropped the house on the governor of Munchkinland, also known as Nessarose Throp, the Wicked Witch of the East. Morrible is damn lucky that Nessarose's subjects hated her so much, because otherwise that could have caused some serious issues. I mean, at the very least, this house debacle left a power vacuum that's likely to be filled by someone else willing to oppress animals and Munchkinlanders. Or how about those flying monkey spies? Yep. Also a total accident. The Wicked Witch of the West was learning how to use the Gramarye with Morrible when she cast a levitation spell that went wrong, putting all of the monkeys in excruciating pain as they grew their wings. Alphabar and Morrible are two of the only known individuals with actual magical talent. The famous Tin Man and Scarecrow are both creations of Alphabar, but instead of blaming her, wouldn't things work out better if the wizard just actually let magical people run his magical school? Maybe with better training, Morrible and Alphabar could get some really good work done. Maybe there would be no need to enslave and torture so many animals. Maybe there's a lot of magical people that are just marginalized by their jerk of a ruler. But then the wizard wouldn't be in charge anymore, and he's the only one who gets a vote. So I guess that's not an actual solution. And this is why we support democracy, kids. But one of the absolute worst parts about living in Oz is how goddamn annoying it can be. I love music just as much as the next guy, but sometimes you'll be walking down the street and you'll see everyone break into song over something incredibly inappropriate. Maybe if so much time wasn't focused on perfecting song and dance numbers, the people would actually notice that they're being lied to. But that's just what the wealthy people like to do in Oz. They like to dress up, look pretty, and sing and dance. And sure, it's a lot of fun for a while, especially if you aren't one of those less lucky Aussians toiling in the fields or doing backbreaking work in the mines. And if you are one of those less lucky Aussians, it seems as if you're just happy to have your moment in the spotlight. Other oppressed groups of people be damned. So that's the real story of what it's like to live in the land of Oz. Just don't tell anyone. Or tell anyone I told you, okay? Or the flying monkeys will capture you. Oh no. They're coming!